Welcome to Stusic, and I'm Stu, and you probably guessed it, we're going to talk about music. What music are we going to talk about today? Well, today I have Slamuel on, talking about his first single, which is doing really well. It's called I Want to Be Okay. It's a good song about a bad time. We cover what it's about in the episode. I'm not going to spend too much time on talking about the episode because it's always kind of redundant at the top of a podcast when they sit there and talk about the show before the show. I will say that Sam is a great guy. I've always loved Sam. He's very genuine. His conversations are great. I know he kept apologizing for ranting, and he even texted me after and was like, sorry, dude. But that's kind of the whole point of this, is to, have free-flowing, honest conversations about things. So, without ranting too much, I'm going to go ahead and drop the song in. It's called I Want to Be Okay. And then we're going to get into our interview with Slamuel.
Stop the pain. But here you are, and you're not okay. I know you've been beaten, I know you've been cheated, and I said I'd take you away. I see you breaking and forsaking, and there's not much left to say. Well, I wanna be okay. Well, I wanna be. Always cloudy, no more better days. All I wanted was for you to breathe. But there you go, and I'm not okay. I feel I've been beaten, I feel I've been cheated, and you said you would take me away. You see I'm breaking and forsaken, and there's nothing left to see. Oh,
All right, so it looks like we are recording. So yeah,
And there we are.
it's crazy how easy it is to do anything these days. I mean, it's
What did you have to go through? The OBS? Is that what worked?
yeah, and all I did was download OBS and like route the mics and that was it. Like it's crazy the time that we live in to where now it's like you watch a video on YouTube and you got it and it takes like 5 minutes and yeah, it's just nuts. So I mean, like how because you recorded everything yourself on I Want to Be Okay, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
All right. And so how did you learn how to do everything? I mean, not just the act of playing instruments and writing songs, which by the way, I've got to give you credit cuz I listened to the song like 5 times in a row after I found out we were doing this cuz I wanted to like make sure everything was fresh. And I got to give you credit because you have something that isn't a skill that you can learn. It's a natural ability to write songs, which not every I know very few people who have that. And you're one of them who can write actual songs instead of just learning a sort of technical skill and just displaying that.
Uh, well, man, is I sincerely appreciate that compliment, but I'm gonna let you know, like right here and now, like it's it was really hard for me to even do that one. My process takes like so long that I go sometimes like weeks weeks at a time without touching an instrument, anything like that, because it it takes me it the process just takes me a lot longer than it should, and that's something that I'm working on. Um, I do enjoy the songwriting process, regardless. With me, it starts with like little like notes here and there. Typically never full songs. However, in this case, it was a full song, and I guess I just had so much um, angst or feeling towards it and the subject matter and everything that it just kind of came out of me like really effortlessly. Sorry for the stumble there. So yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I just can write song after song after song. It takes me a while, and it took me even a couple years um, after I had written the song and had it recorded to even have it released. I went to a couple people, friends of mine, Rick, and my other friend Mars, to see what they could do with the mix of it and everything. And they both did really great jobs with it. I ended up going with Rick's mix. Um, but even he told me you might want to re-record some things. I just didn't really want to lose the rawness of it because at the time when I recorded it, I was going through the emotions of that song. So I felt like if I took more time to record it, like single track it again, do it more digital, because I have upgraded gear since then, that it would just kind of lose its feeling. Does that make any sense to you?
No, that makes perfect sense and to me that's what makes it what it is because in my opinion everything is so quantized and digital, and you know, there was an era when having an endless amount of takes wasn't an option. You know, you had actual tape that cost money. And
Yeah.
instead of just hitting a delete button, there was like, you know, switching out the tape and all that stuff. Things that I'm too young to understand the technical side of.
Oh
But
man, I don't think I could ever do anything like that.
right,
Cutting
but
tapes and stuff.
you know, it's one of those things where back when it was limited and you had less tools, it captured a certain rawness. Sometimes it was just the perfect take, but also sometimes it's what you had to roll with. And
Right. Sometimes it's the imperfections that make it perfect.
exactly, which is what I really loved about this is I understand that maybe, and I think Rick did a great job mixing it, but I didn't like have the files to have to, you know, work with, so I don't know what he had to go through to get it mixed. But I think that the actual takes themselves and the performances, I wouldn't change a thing about, because it has something that you can't quantize or, you know, go in and edit. It has that raw emotion to it, and I think that everything kind of aligned to where it's exactly what it should be.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate that. And I remember like the first time that I went through the song uh with my cousin. My cousin came over at the time. He's good on the drums, so I had him sit down and me and him played along with the structure of the song. And it really wasn't until he did his drum thing that everything made sense to me. And I'm gonna figure out a way to send it to you because I actually like that version of it a lot more because I went really hard on the solo and I didn't really uh, go that hard on the solo in the recording that I put out. Uh, and that's pretty much because my dad taught me from a really young age through watching a series of movies called Eddie and the Cruisers.
Oh,
As,
wow. Okay, yeah.
as weird as that sounds, but he gave there was advice given in that movie. I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one. I think it may have been the second one because he brings in a new guitarist for his new thing, and he has to tell the guy, dude, I see that you can play fast. I see that you can do all these things, use that whammy bar, great, whatever, but you have to let things breathe. You have to let it, you have to let the song do its thing. Um, Sometimes it's not about the notes that you do play, it's about the notes that we know that you're not playing. And I ended up going with a lot more simplified version of everything that I did in the original version.
You know, honestly, my dad actually gave me the same advice. Like, anytime I would watch any of those, like, shred guys, because, I mean, growing up in a room full of guitarists, no matter what you play, you end up watching a lot of shred guitar, inevitably.
Yeah,
And,
whether you want to or not, I'm sure.
right, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're gonna have to. So I was watching or listening to something, and he just goes, "They're just, you know, showing off. It's all like flashy, and all they're doing is, you know, playing fast. It's not really less is more. Unless you
Yeah,
ask like Ingve, more is more, but he's out of the
right. But
question."
I mean, let me show you how many times I've like sook out Ingve to listen to. I typically don't listen to the shred stuff, man. Like maybe the early Satriani, like Surfing with the Aliens, like that was a really good album. But I discovered that when I was like 13. And after that, I really didn't care anymore. And I respect so many of the shred players, like the people that can do all the things that I can't. Like, I'm not a great guitar player. I'm barely a rhythm guitar player. I'm barely a bass player, barely a vocalist. But man, something comes along with just letting your music sit and letting the emotion come from it. It's a lot like stand up, or even dare I say, um, like professional wrestling. It's not everything that you're doing in the ring, it's the emotion that you're evoking to the crowd.
That is probably the best way I've heard that put. Is the
Uh,
wrestling analogy because
Dude, I've been on such a wrestling kick lately, and it sounds so stupid as a 33-year-old man, but that was yet another thing that me and my dad connected with when I was very young. And I've been into it the last few months, and in the back of my head, I'm like, why am I why am I watching this all of a sudden at 33? And it took me it took me a while to figure it out. Like, oh yeah, you just miss him, man. You just want to feel connected.
and honestly, it's first off, I think it's fine to like whatever you like at whatever age. I mean, it's especially things like that where you have that emotional connection with memories and things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with like watching wrestling
Oh,
or
I
SpongeBob or
I
whatever,
yeah, dude, I love SpongeBob. I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like it was actually something that I put down for a long time. Like
Oh, okay.
I haven't watched WWE and like any of their live events on cable, nothing like that in probably 15 years at this point. But it was just all of a sudden out of nowhere, like here I am watching Undertaker's podcast and Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast and really like getting all the details that I didn't know before, uh, that I feel like he would have really connected with too, because he was just a WCW guy like me. It's really odd, man, that it took me as long as it did to figure out why I was watching this stuff. But again, it all goes back to not just the performance, because sometimes things mess up in the ring and performances don't go the way that they're supposed to. But as long as the overall emotion and the drama that you are trying to evoke gets to that crowd, it doesn't matter what happens in the ring. It really doesn't. And that just kind of spoke to me in a lot more deep of a way than it did when I used to watch it when I was a kid.
It's funny where you learn those lessons from. They always come from the least expected places.
Yeah, never thought I'd be learning lessons from the Texas rattlesnake.
No, man, it's everything I've come to realize in life that for me, well, I'm not gonna speak as a generalization, but for me personally, everything sort of contains these lessons. There's something to be learned from everything that you consume or have been through, good or bad. I know that when things are tough for me, it's not necessarily the toxic positivity silver lining thing, but what can I learn from this? Moving
Yeah,
forward, what can I take from this and make from it in the future?
yeah, yeah. It's sometimes, man, it's such a slow process coming to that as well, though. Like, there are lessons in the worst of outcomes. There's lessons in them, and it's why I've always um, tried to preach knowing your history, because if you don't know it, the bad things are just going to happen all over again if you don't learn from it, you know? And things like grief or loss or heartache or sorrow, it inevitably sucks so bad. But there's a lot of lessons to learn from the worst things or the least expected things.
And it's one of those things where, especially like negative emotions, I think, especially I know with loss, it's so hard to face it almost. Like the act of accepting the loss of somebody is typically relatively easy, but everything that comes along with it, I know that there's all these books on grief and all that stuff, but until you experience it firsthand, you really don't know how you're going to deal with it, what it's going to bring out, and what it feels like until you're in it. And
Yeah.
when you start feeling, because there's this want to, I mean, you want to be okay. And so I know for me, at least, I very much just kind of put it aside and said, you know what, I'm just not going to deal with this. I acknowledge all these feelings I'm having toward it, but I'm just going to choose to shove them in the closet for however long, and then they would start representing themselves in weird, fucked up ways that were causing a lot of complications in my life. And it took years for me to see that in myself, to be like, all right, well, I'm doing this, and this is why I'm doing it. And until I face that, I'm gonna keep doing these things.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's one of the big things on the song for me was, I think I wrote and recorded the song about a year after losing my dad. And, like you just said, how bad, uh, grief can get to you and how it can affect you in ways that you really didn't see coming. And for me, um, I know for about a year, man, like I was just in the bottle, in the bottle, and that's not the best way to deal with anything whatsoever. Uh, un unless there's like a whiskey tasting contest or something like I don't really know, but like that's not a way to really deal with anything. And it took about a year of me going going that route. And my wife, God bless her, God bless her, she put up with it. And she's not really, she's not ever really had to deal with grief like that in that respect. When she was born, she didn't have any of her grandparents left, nothing like that. Like the people that grandparents are important, and the most important thing, sadly, is that they teach you that lesson in life or death. And her experience in grief has just been all the grief that I've gone through while we're together. And God bless her. I'm not really religious or anything like that, but she held my hand and she dealt with it, and she told me that I needed to deal with it differently, and I I just stopped drinking. I think I stopped for about 9 months to a year. It was something like that, and in that uh, frame of mind is when I was able to get all the recording and all the songwriting done, on top of learning how to piddle with other things. Like I put a strat together, like I bought all the parts and put it together. It plays like shit, but hey, I figured out how to do it. Um, it was just something that like I was dealing with it the very wrong way, and I had to get the monkey off my back before I can move forward a little bit. And don't get me wrong, brother. There's days where it hits me out of nowhere. I'll not want to hook up my phone to the Bluetooth on the way to or from work, and Boston will come on, or Kiss, two bands that he showed me. Uh, I actually associate most of my music with him. Like here lately, I've been into like a weird little bluegrass country kick, and it makes me feel closer to him. But that aside, uh, I have a beer or two now and again now. I feel like I've gotten that tamed a lot better. Uh, I don't think it ever really goes away. Uh, but getting away from it and kind of facing it, I think is where all the angst and emotion from the track come from, if that makes sense. Because I was hurting, man. I was having to face it with nothing for the first time, and it was really hard. It was really hard.
Yeah, I really admire the fact that, and I'm always jealous of people who can like have like a couple of beers, because I'm sober going on about I want to say a year and a half ish.
Oh, that's great, brother.
Yeah, it's going on a year and a half, and I know that in my personality, it's like I'm all or nothing. I'm very extreme about whatever it is I do. I do like in excess. I'm just an excessive person.
Oh man,
So
growing up when and where we grew up, like when there was nothing to do, that's what you did, right? Like it was the same for me. Like growing up in West Georgia and like Carrollton, especially when I was living out there, it's just a drinking town. Like that's
oh
how we're taught to fill our time and cope and things like that. And it took me being back home and having my family to teach me that, you can have a couple beers at night. Like you can do that, but there's there's you have a responsibility to yourself to for that just not to be all of you, you know?
right, and I know I like you said, it's at Carrollton. I mean, with the college being there, I mean, and there's a
Yeah.
liquor store on every single fucking road in
I'd
Carrollton.
worked on the square, man. Like that's
Right.
what you did when you got off work.
I mean, that's
Before
all
you
there
went
is
to
on the
work, even.
square. There's like Vinyl Frontier and then places to drink. That's
Shout out to Brandon Quigg. He rules at the Vinyl Frontier. He's the best dude.
oh, that place is incredible. I haven't interacted with him too much, but I've loved every conversation I've had with him, and that is the diamond in the rough that is Carrollton. Because I mean, my God, it's like West Georgia is just all it is an alcoholic factory.
Yeah,
It just
for sure.
breeds alcoholics, which no judgment because I mean
And we're
I'm
products of it.
yeah. But kudos, man, for being able to sort that out because it's not an easy thing. Especially, I mean, that first little bit is rough, and that there's so much that you have to face once you remove that just sucks. But I mean, going back to the what can I learn from this and what can come from it, I mean, so you stopped drinking completely for a while, correct? Like,
Yes, sir.
around the conception of the song. So, what was the timeline you think between cutting out the alcohol and when the song sort of came out?
Um, Honestly, I think it came at about the worst part from what I've been told. Um, there's always, you know, I, I think it's the first 5 days, 5 to 7 days, it hits you really hard. And then you get through a little lull there, and then it hits you really hard again at about 2 months. And that's about where I was at, where it was hitting me real hard. I was like, okay, like I've done all that I can as far as trying to put together this guitar or um, put lyrics together. Like I said earlier, I kind of write in bits and pieces. So that's what takes me so long in the songwriting process. But it was about 2 months, I would say, full nothing, uh, where it hit me real hard. And I think for the first time, it was actually the music that hit me first. I typically write lyrics first, and that determines the feeling of the song. But this time, it was music. And I had a friend at the time who was coming over and playing a lot with me. He's in, I think, a few bands out in Atlanta now. Brian Ricks is his name. He's a great dude, great metal drummer, stoner metal. I think he was playing with Thrum for a while. I think he may be with like Stone Ape now. Great dude. So when I was going through all of this, he was coming out and jamming with me, and just I had something to focus on. What really helps is having something to really focus on. And what helped me even more was uh, being a dad. You know, uh, at the time, I think my youngest she was just about to turn one, I believe, when he passed. Babies don't give a shit that you're grieving. They just don't. And then, there in itself is a lesson. The rest of the world does not care if you're grieving. You just have to keep going on and doing the best that you can. And she taught me a lesson, even at 1 years old, that Daddy, you just got to keep going, because I'm not going to stop crying, you know?
Right. She's gonna. I mean, at 1 years old, she's gonna shit her pants regardless. So, you
Yeah, she
know,
don't care. She's like, hey, I see you crying there, but what about this?
right? She's gonna cry more.
Yeah, and it's so funny, man. She was, not even one when he passed, and like I told you earlier, it hits you out of nowhere sometimes. It's usually about like once a month for me. I'll have one day where, man, it messes me up, and like, I'll just be doing regular things with my daughter and start crying, and she'll know. She'll be like, "It's Pop, isn't it?" Even though she does not remember him at all. I have pictures everywhere of him and her together, but she doesn't remember him. But she knows, man. She's like, it's pop, isn't it? I'm like, it's like it's a blessing when you're grieving and it's a curse when you're grieving. But man, there's the lessons in both sides of it.
Because I definitely connect with I'm not a father, but the aspect of how random it hits you and how little control you have over that. Because I mean, you don't decide that like, oh, I'm off work today. I'm going to grieve today. It just happens. Like I know for me, like you mentioned, like Boston coming on the radio.
Yeah.
Uh, Little things like I'd Rather Go Blind by Etta James is a song that whenever it comes
Oh
on, it's like
man.
I can't I you know if I'm in public, I have to ask for it to be turned off because it'll do things to me, or even like really silly things like my dad loved Chick-fil-A and would always get like the mayonnaise packets, and if I see a pack of Chick-fil-A mayonnaise, it makes me sad. And it's like you have zero control over what's going to bring that out in you and when. And it's almost like when those moments do hit you, what they don't tell you about grief is the stages of grief aren't like necessarily they happen one at a time. It's like the moment that is reopened, you feel all of it, like all the stages, all at the same time.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily in order. And you're right, it is what we consider to be like dumb little things. Uh, but they're not dumb and they're not little. Uh, but like going back to the Boston thing, it's specifically here lately it's been Boston, but it's something that I didn't realize that how much he had taught me when it had come to music until he was gone, because now I realize all the songs that remind me of him because he played them for me or exposed them to me first, you know? Like I was a hardcore Kiss fan from like 9 until like 12 because that dude showed me who Kiss was. And they incorporated what I loved, comic books, crazy stuff and decent, rock and roll music. I'm not as crazy about them these days. Maybe their early stuff, but I didn't realize that Motley Crue would set me off one day. It's little things like that. I didn't realize that a stupid Toby Keith song would set me off one day because I associate so much and so many songs and music with him and our relationship.
It's it's one of those things that I think that memory is so bizarre. The way that you can go back and associate things without like in the subconscious realizing it, like not knowing that how much a Motley Crue song meant to you or how much a Toby Keith song meant to you. You don't set out life going like, oh, this song is going to mean something to me. I mean, you hear things as you get older and start to kind of become more in tune with your emotions, what you connect with. But growing up, it's like you don't realize what you're sort of picking up and latching on to. And any emotion, good or bad, it's almost like they end up choosing you. You don't choose your emotions, they choose you, but you get to choose what you do with them. So
Yeah.
it's funny how things will just come to light, and figuring out as a person, as a human being, how, like, what you're gonna do with them.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from my good friend Stephen Lee, who we call Stevo. Um, he told me in a really dark place when I was a teenager that, hey, bro, all that you have in this life is the reaction to the things that happen to you. You literally cannot control anything else in this life. So once you learn how to control your reaction, things will go a lot more smoothly for you. Now that can go two ways now. If you control your reaction to the point that you are not being true to like your partner or something like that, then you've gone too far with it. But there is a point to where you can realize that your reaction is it's literally all you've got. And what sucks with grief is you you literally can't control that reaction sometimes. Like your body doesn't care that it's 3 o'clock and you're at work. Like you're gonna cry. Like this is going to emotionally affect you. And that's the worst thing about grief. Anything else that comes at me, I feel like I've got a good handle on the reactions and everything. But man, you just you can't control it. It's such an odd animal, and it's really hard for me to explain this. I digress.
Well, I mean, I know that we've grown apart over the years just because that's how life goes for everybody. But I see your Facebook posts. I see the pictures of you and the family. And honestly, you're doing really well, man. Like, even on days that it doesn't feel like it, you are handling things to the best of your ability and in a way that is as healthy as it can be. And the fact that you see these things and acknowledge these things, I mean, most people don't get that in a way. And I mean, and the fact that all these lessons came from it, like the laying back on the alcohol and the song, and I mean, you've done really well, and like I'm fucking proud of you, dude, because I mean, it's hard to make a finished product of anything, and from start to finish, you fucking did it, and you did it like 98, like, so you did everything with the mixing, right?
No, that was Rick. I
Right.
did the initial like leveling and things like that, but uh I did send it to him track by track so that he could get the the best that he could. Um I forget what that process is called, but he did the mix that you've heard.
So like the
And
EQing and all that
and
stuff.
he was a big fan too. He told me it's raw. And to some people that might not be a compliment, but coming from Rick, it was a big compliment, and coming from someone like you as well, it's a huge compliment.
I mean, just again, just the performance is spot on. I think. I mean, the emotion in your voice. I've always liked the way you break your voice. But another thing that I don't get to hear a lot of from you that I was really admiring in this song was the background higher notes, the falsetto, the
Oh
very
yeah,
sort of like reminded me of Queens of the Stone Age very much,
dude,
layered.
I love Queens of the Stone Age. I love them. Can't speak for them like band member wise, what they choose to do, but
Well,
some of their songs hit really hard.
yeah, I mean, you have to separate the art from the artist. Like, they're one of my favorite bands, but I don't, condone the actions of the members. But, I mean, your delivery in subtle layers like that is perfect. And I know the stages of the solo, the rising action, and when you finally kick in with the wah pedal and the way you just lay into it in that moment after kind of laying back for the first section, it was so perfect. It's just one of those things that when you hear it, it's chill inducing because of the way it sets up. It's like those well executed wrestling moves where it's like the setup would just happen to be just right and it landed just right, and it I can't say enough about it. I mean, I'm going to play it at like the beginning of this episode after I do an intro or whatever. But I mean, man, it's one of those things that makes me excited.
I appreciate it, dude. Like I said earlier, I kind of struggled with that solo and what to do with it, but in the end, I chose to remember the lesson that my dad taught me, or tried to teach me uh, through watching movies and having talks with me and stuff like that. My dad was never a musician at all. I bought him a guitar later on in his life, and his hands were just so messed up that he couldn't really play it. From dealing with sheet metal and doing AC work his whole life. But he used to run sound. He used to run sound for a band back in the day, and he more or less taught me the lessons, like the first lessons in everything, uh, without him teaching me anything instrument wise. It's it's very, very odd. Um, but he had it. He knew how to explain it to me. Uh, Man, it's gonna be hard to find that again, but I'm hoping that I can be that person for my daughters. They love coming in here with me, playing drums, hooking up my microphone, and I'll put effects on for them, so they can sing through their favorite songs. Uh, I wasn't like that when I was young because I didn't have that when I was young, but I hope that I've planted seeds that my dad planted in me so that all of us can keep can keep living through for a long time.
Well, I think that when people refer to the spirit carrying on, they take it sort of in a very literal sense, but those little things that he instilled in you, that you took and allowed to grow within yourself, you take and instill in your children, and it keeps growing. So, I mean, there's the blueprints and the foundations of generations and generations from,
Yeah, it's
you
like my
know,
great my great grandkids are gonna know my dad's mannerisms without ever have met him. It's really crazy.
Right. I mean, it's the spirit carries on in a way that you can't really describe. You have to witness that. You have to see, that look in your daughter's face that reminds you of him, or in your own face or your own mannerisms where you say something or do something that you're like, oh shit, my dad used to do that.
Yep,
you know
exactly.
and it's one of those things where, I mean, once it is planted, it never stops growing.
Yeah, it's a big seed, man. It really is, and it goes on for generations and generations, and nobody will really ever know. But you know what? When you go, you'll know that you instilled that stuff. And that's something to fucking keep in mind because it's having a family's hard, bro. Having kids is hard. You gotta take the little victories when you can get them. And when my daughter comes up to me and asks me to pull her finger or like says a joke to me that my dad taught me, I just know that things are going the way that they're supposed to be going.
And that's the best possible outlook you could have with it, is acknowledging and appreciating those things.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. Grief is tough, but just learn the little lessons when you can. Get what little joy you can. If anybody here is dealing with grief and is new to it, I'm just going to let you know now that, it's not always the sad times. It's not always the sad times where it hits you. It's going to be the happy times when your face is directly in the sun and the world looks beautiful. That's when grief hits you too, when life is beautiful. And if you can learn to deal with it when it's beautiful, you can also learn to deal with it when it's a little bit gloomy. And I hope somebody takes some advice from that.
That was wow. Did you come up with all of that like on your own? That was all from the heart?
You know, I kind of paraphrased something that I heard from a comedian, Patton Oswalt. It's one of his it was probably like 4 or 5 specials ago, but he loses his wife and he tells, he has to go through telling their daughter that, mom is gone, and the advice that one of the teachers gave to him was don't tell her at night where she has to go to bed. Tell her in the sunshine. And that spoke a lot to me even before I was going through it. And, I've gone camping with my kids, and just when you are enjoying life to its fullest is when you want the person that you miss the most to be there with you. And like I said, man, it's not always in gloomy times. It's when you're happy and you want to share that happiness.
Well, I think the biggest thing you can do in a situation like that is share it with somebody in your life. I mean, you have your family that you share these things with, and that's all you can do in that situation is, I mean, feel the sadness, but take the happiness that you do have and share that. And even in ways that you don't realize, like, you writing and releasing the song and other people hearing it and people getting excited, you don't realize the joy that you're actually spreading. It's so I want you to know that it's like even in the darkest times that those like seeds of happiness are there too.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely are, and I see them most in my daughters. It's you see them at a side glance or them smiling a certain way, and you're like, there's Pop right there, there he is, and it's in those beautiful moments that it's hard to keep composure because you're seeing the person that you miss the most right there in front of you, and there's nothing you can do except love that person as much as you can while you're around still at this point.
Well, I'm so proud of you, man, for like everything that you've accomplished amidst all of this. Like it's not something that everybody can say. So I just want you to know, man, that like thank you for making the song and being who you are and doing what you do, because that it definitely makes a difference in the lives of others. Like I hope that people hear your song and connect with it in the way that in the place that it came from.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I had no clue that a month into it I'd have like 400 and something monthly listeners without really promoting it at all. So like I really hope that it's hitting people from the right place, that it's not a place from I wish I I could be better. It's I want you to know that you can be okay, and it's okay to want to be okay. It's okay for you to go through those things. There's a whole ocean of emotion, and we're just riding the fucking wave, man. And Stu, I think that you're touching people the same way. I've listened to every single episode that you've had so far, and I've enjoyed everything, man. And I really like what you're doing. Uh, I would love to be on another episode later in the future if I ever come out with another song.
Ab-
But outside of that, I'd still love to talk again, even if it wasn't recorded.
Absolutely, man. And I know you're busy. So I know you're probably pressed for time at this point because we're going on an hour. But thank you so much, man. And I know that we. Is there anything that you would like to touch on about the song that we didn't really cover?
I'm trying to think. I recorded it on a Gibson Les Paul tribute that I had at the time, as well as a Fender Telecaster, and I used an orange. Let me see. It was a solid state Crush. I used a orange Crush 100 half stack. And other than that, I used some electronic drums that I added reverb to in the mix to make them sound a little bit more alive. Uh, I think I played what was a Squire bass at the time. There's nothing really outside of that that I can really think of, brother.
Well, it all worked out perfectly. And thank you for sharing your story, your insights, your music, and thank you for just being you, man. I appreciate it. And I hope that you and the family take care, and I look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Of course, brother man. Thank you for even wanting to have me on. It was great just having a little open-ended conversation. Very sorry if I rambled on.
No, that's what this
But
is for.
we'll uh we'll do it again soon, and I hope you and your family are doing as well as they can be, and I hope that you have some happy happy days and happy holidays ahead of you.
Thank you. You too, man. You take care.
All right, brother. Holla.
Bye.